You ready to do this, Matt?
Yes, sir. Punch it, Chewie.
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot is Matt Shaw. We're two nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 145. We release every Thursday morning. You can find us on our website, fortofnerd.com. We have links to iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, and everywhere podcasts are available. Stop by, relax a while. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear holes. Matt, what is going on? How are you tonight?
I am living large tonight.
Ooh, Texas style?
Texas style, man. We do it big. We do it
Nice.
big. No, normal style, normal size. Life is great. Everything's good. There's no, I don't got nothing that exciting to talk about.
So I don't want to start off on a horrible downer of a note, but I'm on a I just want to say that, obviously right now there's a big, huge hurricane going on off the coast of Florida. It is, devastated through some islands of the Bahamas. And so our thoughts and prayers are with all the people that are suffering right now. The people who have lost family members, are without power, without food. If you have family, if you have friends, if you live in that area, if you know people that do, check in with your friends, check in with your family, make sure everyone's okay. And, our prayers are with those that aren't.
Yes.
That being said, let's get on to the frivolity and the silliness that is the Fortress of Nerditude.
Yes. Also, yes, that.
Yes. So the big weekend, Labor Day weekend, what did you guys do?
Oh, man. We had a heck of a weekend, I'm not going to lie. It was awesome. We actually, did something this weekend. So, well, first of all...
You said that, we never do anything, so...
Nothing
we
that
did
interesting.
Something. Gotcha.
This one was interesting. So, first of all, this weekend, The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance came out on Netflix. Shout out to how awesome that show is. Oh my gosh. It's
Really?
So good. So good. Just watch the first 5 minutes and it gives you this epic, I'm going to say something here that's not accurate. Epic Lord of the Rings feel, this massive quest, and it makes the movie look pathetic. And I love the movie. Anyway, go back. The voice acting, you look at that cast of voice actors, you're like, holy cow, they got some... it's funny to hear Mark Hamill's voice as a Skeksis. Anyway, I would recommend it to anybody who's unsure. Just give it a try. Give it a few minutes, and I feel confident that you'll be pulled into the world of Thra. It's so good. So anyway, that was great. And then I got Astral Chain, which is Platinum Games' newest release exclusively for Nintendo, and it is so good. I'm having a lot of fun. Japanese anime style, dramatic and crazy music. It's so fun.
I heard a lot of good things about it. So how much time do you have into it so far, would you say?
I'd say I probably have 4 hours, maybe. Not a ton of time, but enough time for me to have an understanding of the gameplay. And it's super deep with the way that you can... Because it's a Platinum game, so it's very action forward. And the combat in this game, unlike games like Bayonetta that they've had, this one's a little more deep and complex in the type of attacks you use and the strategy behind how you fight these enemies, we'll call them. It's really cool. So and it's for Nintendo, it's very story driven with cutscenes and voice acting. It's really cool. So I would recommend checking that out if you're a fan of Platinum games or action games kind of in general. It's really cool. And the art style is really cool too. So I played a couple hours of that, but the big event We left on Saturday morning, just Jesse and I. We left Emmy with her grandma and grandpa. And we hopped in the car and we drove up to Houston. Down to Houston, I guess. And we went to see the Backstreet Boys. And it was so much fun.
Really?
Oh my gosh. I'm a huge Backstreet Boys fan, unapologetically. Always loved Backstreet Boys. When it was the Battle of NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, I wouldn't even give NSYNC a second thought. I loved them, and they came out with a new album this year, and it's very good. And they're going on, their world tour for the first time in a long time. They've had their residency in Vegas, so this is their first time on the road in a while, and it was just like, it was so fun. You sit in your seat, and you see everybody else who's like in their 30s, and you're just jamming with them, and they've got lots of pregnancy bellies. So Jesse was in good company. They even the Backstreet Boys were kind of talking about it. We see, we've grown together. You guys have started families. We've started families. I see many of you are with child. Shout out to the ladies with child. And Jesse's like, yeah. It was a lot of fun. So, and they really leaned into the 90s boy band of it. Very self-aware, though. The dance moves are very sexy and grabbing their crotch and stuff. It's so funny. Oh, it was an absolute blast. Anyway, I could talk about that concert for hours. It was so much fun.
There is something to be said, like, once you get to a point when you go to see a band that, like, you grew up with, and then you realize, like, you're not the young ones at the concert anymore. And you start looking around. I've been to a few concerts like that, and I went, yeah. The worst, though, was, oh gosh, this one maybe it was like 10 years ago, maybe. My family went to go see Three Dog Night in concert at like this like little like county fair, but we went because Three Dog Night was one of my dad's favorite bands growing up, and my dad had passed in 2002. And it had been like 7 or 8 years, I think, since his passing, and we went to go see it. And like they put on a good show. It was fun. They didn't hit the high notes like they used to anymore. So they do like a lot of older artists will do is, they kind of keep it more in their kind of the middle range of their voice and whatnot. And that's totally fine. But I remember looking around going, at the time, this is like 10 years ago. At the time I was like 30. And we were the extreme youngest ones there by far.
Yeah.
And I kind of remember going like, yeah, yep, this crowd that would, come see this band is much, much older.
Right.
But now like I go and see bands that like I grew up with in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And it's like Pearl Jam is not a young band. Like they're not the band of like the rebel youth movement of the early 90s, like it was when I was that age. Now it's like, yeah, we're like in our, mid to late 40s, maybe even early 50s. And we've got kids and some of us are starting to get close to having grandkids, that sort of thing.
Right.
And you're like, ooh,
yeah.
Like I used to watch this band, and this band, like with Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, was like the voice of a generation. It was like the voice of the dissonant youth of Gen X.
Right.
And now it's like, yeah, these guys are becoming grandfathers. Not quite the same. It's probably what people felt about like Mick Jagger.
Right.
When in the 60s, he was like, he was Sex on a Stick. He was the Rolling Stones. And now he's like this octogenarian, who's got to, take, oxygen breaks on the side of the stage in between, sets. And I'm just saying things change.
Things change.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was fun to live
though.
In 1999 again. It was really, really fun to sit back and just, it was a really fun night.
Party like it's 1999.
We Prince, did. No? We did. It was a lot of fun. So we had a super great night and a fun time getting away from Emmy and being able to just like relax and not have to take care of anyone or wake up at any certain hour. So it was nice. And then, got up the next morning on Sunday morning and left back to reality. But it was a really fun weekend, had good food, and it was just a lot of fun. So it was nice to get away. And then yesterday, of course, was Labor Day, and we just drove out with my sister and her kids, and we went out to the outlet mall here, went to Disney store, and their Halloween stuff was up. So that's always fun to kind of get a look at what's coming up, and just kind of hung out the rest of the day. For those of you that are familiar with the fantastic, I can't even call it a convenience store, but with Buc-ee's, which is a staple here in Texas. They are like, if you think of a convenience store, but like 100,000 times better, with like barbecue, a wall of like drink fountains, and tons of like food that they make. And then the bathrooms, every single bathroom like has stalls that go all the way down, and it's like a truck stop dream.
It's kind of like one of the big Mavericks around here.
Yes.
Where they cook food, and like some of them have like little Cinnabon like booths and in them, and
yes,
yeah.
It's probably something similar to that. But of course, being a Texan, I'm going to say it's that, but better.
Well, it has barbecue.
It does have barbecue.
It has barbecue, so you win.
And it's got like a whole shopping section. It's a thing here. Like you see T-shirts everywhere you go with the Buc-ee's guy on it. And he has a little Buc-ee's stuffed animal. I mean, it's a sense of pride here. So anyway, we stopped there 4 times this weekend because they're all over.
4 times?
Well, twice on the way to Houston, once on the way back, and then once on the way to the outlet mall. So if you're ever in Texas and you see a Buc-ee's, just stop. Just for the spectacle of it. You're thinking of a convenience store. All you super friends are thinking of a convenience store. It's not. You gotta look it up. Get on YouTube. Probably has a walkthrough. Especially the one in San Marcos. It's the biggest one, which is the one right close to where we live. Pretty much every time we go to Austin, we stop there. And it's awesome. So anyway, that was our...
I'm looking at some pictures of Buc-ee's right now, and it's Buccees.
Yes, with the little beaver guy with a little red hat.
Yeah, kind of like these big, like Flying J.
Yeah.
Type of ideas. Yeah.
So anyway, that was our Labor Day. Gosh, more the Labor Day weekend. How was yours? Tell me how your week was. What happened?
I'm now obsessed with this Buc-ee's.
As you should be.
I want to see about getting a Buc-ee's T-shirt.
Yep.
They have a store.
They have
Can I get it?
1,000 different designs probably. Every time you go there, they've got new designs. They had like an 80s design last time, and this time there were some Halloween ones, and it really is... one of the bigger senses of pride now that Whataburger is outside of Texas, and it's really one of the only last things that are uniquely only in Texas, not just the South or the Southwest or whatever. So
we'll have to figure out how to get me a Buc-ee's T-shirt because
we can make it happen.
You can buy them online. Yeah. Man, my week. My weekend was good. So a few things that happened this weekend. I worked some extra time this weekend trying to get some things done. We got internet moved from one of our buildings we were vacating into the new building, one of the buildings we were vacating into an existing building that before we used a point-to-point radio to beam the internet over. And now we're no longer using that, which is good. So we did that. I did that on Friday night. And then there was something that happened that I'll swing back around to in a minute, but we spent time as a family together. We took a drive, up through Ogden Canyon, which if you're not familiar with Utah, the Wasatch Front, the big mountain range kind of goes along, it kind of cuts through kind of the middle of the state, but on the west side of the mountain range, along the mountains is where most of the state lives. On the eastern side of the mountains, there's some. So we're on the western side. We kind of went up through this Ogden Canyon going from west to east. And we get behind the kind of the mountain range there. And then we take this really pretty drive heading down south. And we go through Morgan and Camus and Hennifer and Echo, and there's a bunch of reservoirs. And so we went through like Echo Reservoir, and then as we got down further, we went past Park City on the backside, down towards Heber. We passed Jordanelle, and it's really pretty. And we stopped in Heber at this place called Dairy Keen, Keen, Dairy Keen. And in Heber, they're real famous for having this train, and they call it the Heber Creeper, and you can pay money, and it's like this little 90-minute train ride, and you can go on. But at the Dairy Keen, it's kind of like a hamburger stand. Like, it does hamburgers, and it does like cheeseburgers and grilled cheese sandwiches and a variety of sandwiches, but then they have like shakes and ice cream and whatnot. So we thought we'd stop there for some dinner with the boys, do something a little different, get out of the car. We've been in the car for quite a while. But it's got train themes because of this Heber Creeper. And there was this little train that went around the top, kind of the ceiling, that the kids could watch, and they kept pointing out, "Look, Dad, it's over there. Look, Dad, it's over here. Look, Dad, it's over there." And they've got like trains on like every like wall painted, and there's trains on the backs of and train tracks on the backs of like the booths. And there's like a play area where you can play with like those like Brio trains. And then they had some Harry Potter trains, and like the kids just ate that up. Like, they just loved that. And then after we were done there, which admittedly took a while because that place is popular and busy.
Yep.
We left there, we went down Provo Canyon, turned at Sundance, which is famous, from Robert Redford. Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid. It's a ski resort. They also have the film festival there. We went up past Sundance, and then we followed this kind of road. It's called the Alpine Loop. It goes through a state park, and we just kind of followed it. It's this really windy trail, and the road gets pretty narrow in places. So passing other cars, you have to slow down. But we went around this thing, and we just took this beautiful drive through this wooded tree area on the side of the mountain, and we stopped and got out and got a picture with the family and just kind of like enjoy the time. And then you come out American Fork Canyon, and it basically just kind of drops you right out into kind of like suburbia at the bottom of that. And then we hopped on the freeway and jetted for home. And so like we just decided we wanted to take some time to get away from just the normal things and do something different.
Yeah.
So we did that. Apex Legends, I've been playing that over the weekend, and a new limited time event just started, and it'll be running for the next 2 weeks, which is pretty exciting. I, though, today just got Final Fantasy VIII remastered on the PS4. It's one of the only Final Fantasy games I have not played. I kind of like that older generation, and I'm super looking forward to this.
Awesome.
I'm excited. I have it on. Technically, I own it on PS1. I've got the PS1 discs, but I don't have any way to play that anymore.
Yeah.
And so I've technically owned the game for years and years. But a couple of years ago, I thought about picking it up, maybe like on Steam or something, but I kept hearing all these bad things and about how it just needed to be worked on, and it was kind of rebuilt because the original masters had been destroyed, and it's, a fairly common story with Square from back in the day. But it's been completely redone and remastered. So it's still the same game, but just some better graphics, and they've kind of helped the engine a little bit, and they've kind of rebuilt it so now you can play the classic. And I'm looking forward to jumping into that.
Nice.
I haven't started streaming back on Twitch again, just mainly because I worked so much. I'm kind of just taking a break from a lot of things right now, just kind of relaxing a little bit, trying to get a little bit of a wind under my sails again, because I'm feeling pretty worn out.
Yeah.
If I'm just honest, I'm feeling pretty worn out. But here's the last thing I'm going to talk about, and I think this was the best thing of all, so I'm saving it for last.
All right.
Super friends, you obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you're going to remember Stu, my former co-host, that needed to step away from the podcast a little while to work on his relationship with his daughters, and the relationship that was budding at the time with this woman that he was dating. And he was wanting to focus on that and make sure that things were going well. On Saturday, I attended the wedding reception of Stu and Katina.
Woo!
And I got to be there for them on their special day. And it was such a wonderful thing to see Stu so madly in love and so happy, and to know that like things were starting to struggle some with that relationship, and that relationship was really, really new, and that Stu knew at such an early time that Katina was the one, that he loved her and he wanted to be with her. And we talked about that. And of course, like, when that happens like really fast, you're always kind of like, yikes, pump the brakes a little bit, slow down. And so like, we'd have these conversations. I'm like, just make sure you're not running too fast. I'm not saying don't do the right thing. Just make sure you're not running too fast. That's all I'm saying. And then there was some things, and I don't know all the details, but he just needed to focus on things that were important to him in his life, and Katina was one of them. And to see them together, married as husband and wife, and to see them happy on Saturday was such a momentous, joyous occasion. From the bottom of my heart, I want to tell Stu that I love him dearly, and I am so grateful for the time I got to spend with him on this podcast, but I'm so grateful for his friendship, and I'm so happy that he found someone that, not to be cliche, but that completes him, someone that makes him happy, someone that he just is head over heels in love with. And I'm just so glad he has that. And so, Stu, I love you, man. I'm so happy for you. I know you're on your honeymoon right now, and you're not going to be listening to this.
You shouldn't be listening to this.
For sure, Matt. You're right. But I want to know, thank you from the bottom of my heart for making sure that I was able to be there with you. That meant a lot to me. And I hope all the best for you and Katina for all your days to come.
It's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, it was, man, it was wonderful. It was just so good to see. And if anyone that could use good things in his life, Stu is one of those guys that you just want good things to happen for.
Right.
So anyway, that was there's nothing else I could tell you in my weekly roundup that's going to top that. So I think it's appropriate if we just move right on into Rebel Intelligence.
Moving to murdering some Bothans, shall we?
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, Matt. Bothans have been murdered. We light murder though. Light murder. They were gently killed.
Yeah, this week we were much more gentle.
In celebration of love and union between Stu and Katina, it was just light murder. All right, Matt, so what do you have for me this week?
All right, so let's keep things light by talking about the Nintendo Switch Lite.
Oh,
like
look
that.
At you.
Fancy. It's always better when you acknowledge that it's a... Anyway, okay. So the Nintendo Switch Lite, for those that don't know, is the Nintendo Switch, but a handheld-only version. So the Joy-Con don't detach.
Yep.
There's no TV mode. It's simply like a Game Boy Advance, but larger. So the improved battery life, and it's lighter and it's smaller. It's all these things, right? So it's basically meant for being portable. It's a Nintendo Switch that doesn't switch. Yep. And it has cool colors. It looks pretty sexy, but I probably can't justify it. If it's a Nintendo
Switch that doesn't switch, should we still call it the Switch?
We should call it the Don't Switch. Can't switch. Anyway,
can't switch.
One of the best things about it is obviously that it's portable and it's got great battery life and all of that. However, it's really, really neat because they finally have developed a case for it that's not stupid. Ooh. So... I have a Nintendo Switch, obviously, and I have a case for the Nintendo Switch, and it's really hard to put that into a nice, pretty package because things are bumping out and the Joy-Cons are kind of not in there too snugly and you got to stick your games in. It's clunky. Clunky. But it's a cost you take on. There are always going to be some sacrifices. However, with this one, they've basically created a slim design for your Switch. So it's like super form fitting. You can charge it through the case. It's got a little slot that you can charge it. And the front like flips down onto it and it has like little stick outs for your the thumbsticks.
So is it kind of like a clamshell case?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They've fixed something. I mean, it's almost like an iPad case or a tablet case where you can like fold it over and it's like sticks in, like it's made to be on it. It's really cool.
Is this something like Nintendo did, or is this like another manufacturer did?
So this is from Nintendo.
Oh, okay. First party.
So the images that we have of it is Nintendo Japan. So really cool, well designed. Finally, it does protection, but it's also slim. And this is meant to be portable, so it's supposed to be able to fit in the pocket. And it's unrealistic for your regular Nintendo Switch to fit in your pocket with how it's designed. It doesn't work that well. But anyway, Nintendo Switch Lite comes out, I think, the 20th of this month. Check it out. It's $199 versus $299 for the regular Switch. I would get one, but I play it on the TV too much, so it doesn't make as much sense for me.
Yeah.
But what do you...
No, I play mine almost exclusively on the TV when I play it. Occasionally I take it with me when I travel somewhere, which isn't all that often. And like I took it with me when we went on the cruise.
Yes, as did I.
And Disney World. You know how many times I actually played it?
I didn't play it once.
I didn't play it once.
Too much other stuff.
I was on vacation for 2 weeks, and it was like every time we get back to the hotel room or back to the stateroom, I was so tired and so just like worn out from like a full day activity and whatnot that I never wanted to turn it on.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't work in a job where I travel. Like if I had to take like a bus ride, like 45 minutes an hour every day, oh man, I'd be playing it mobile all the time.
Yep.
But since I don't, I just kind of keep it docked.
Yep.
So.
As do I.
And I know that probably makes me in the minority because I know the whole design of it's to make it mobile anyway.
I don't know. It's probably 50-50 for most people. At least that's what I read on Reddit. Anyway, go ahead. What do you have for us?
So speaking of protection and protecting things we love, we know that James Cameron is involved with this new Terminator movie that's coming up. And of course, James Cameron, did the first and the second movies, and then he stepped away, and you got Terminator Genesis and Terminator Salvation and Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. And none of those movies seem to quite live up to Terminator and Terminator 2. I've publicly stated on this podcast that I think Terminator, the first Terminator, is probably one of my favorite, like, kind of cult sci-fi movies. It's also got some amazing kind of like time travel aspect to it. And of course, AIs that are looking to destroy humanity. That's just a great sci-fi story all wrapped into one. So James Cameron is back as a producer on this new movie. He's not directing it, but he is producing it, and he's taking a stronger hand. And so what's interesting is he said just recently in an interview with Deadline that he's actually recently rewatched Rise of the Machines, Salvation, and Genesis, the other Terminator movies he was not part of, for the reason that he wants to see what they did wrong and avoid those mistakes in this new one. Which is interesting because usually you'd say, okay, well, you've got this idea, you've got a story, you know this world, you created this world, like this is your baby.
Yeah.
Tell it, ignore the other stuff. And this movie is going to ignore all those other movies. So essentially in his canon, and we've talked about this because, he's kind of the man, the canon is actually now going to be Terminator 1 or Terminator 2, and then whatever this Terminator is going to be called, Dark Fate. But he said that he wanted to get back to the basics. Some of the other movies involved like too much time travel, too much jumping around, like things taking too long. He said he went back and looked at the first and second movies and that they take place over like 36 hours, 48 hours, like a little under 2 days. And he says that they want to do that, But he sat down with the director, Tim Miller, and they came out and planned out a 3-film arc. And they did it in a way, though, that if this movie makes money and does well, then they can tell some other stories. But if it doesn't, it can just kind of end here.
Okay.
And they're fine. But they're leaving themselves some wiggle room to do some other stuff coming up. And that they're also, like, I guess he was also, like, sending in scripts. Like, he felt like the scripts weren't doing well. And so he was sending in pages like day before. So this is some news we haven't got a lot of news recently on Terminator Dark Fate. When you hear this, Matt, that like the producer, the guy that created something is involved, but that like he's going to watch the old stuff, the other stuff to see what didn't work. Like, is this something to you that screams like micromanaging, or is this something like that screams to you like impassioned creator that just wants to make sure he helps control his vision?
Definitely the latter. But I think that I should say, that most directors do this anyway. That would be my hope, is that you go back and you watch films previous and think of, how do I improve upon this? How do I make this better?
I mean, I guess it depends, too, on the deal you have with the studio, right? Because, like, look at J.J. Abrams, who did The Force Awakens. He was signed on to do the one movie and none others, and so he basically wrote a script and filmed it and did all that, and then just kind of left a whole bunch of stuff out there for other people to figure out.
Right.
Because he knew he wasn't on the hook for any of the other 2 movies.
Right.
And then, then Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi, and then they pulled that 9th movie from Rian Johnson, and then they went back to JJ. So there's that. That's a different thing.
Well, Ryan
but I mean,
never had the 9th movie.
No, it was a Colin Trevorrow.
Freaking Colin. But I don't have I would hope that this is something that would happen more often. And I think
that the original creator would be involved in future
when you
projects.
Look at George Lucas, right? George Lucas has been involved. I don't know that he ever thinks, badly about his previous creations with, the prequels. Let's just
he should.
However, he's still involved, though. Even in The Mandalorian, right? I mean, he still gave advice to Jon Favreau and said, don't forget, this, and this, and this, and this. So I like that the vision is still George's for Star Wars, and that's how I think a lot of these films and series should be, is honoring whoever came first. I mean, even with the Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, right? It's the Jim Henson Company. It's his kids that are involved in this, and the legacy is still there, and the vision is still theirs, right? Disney didn't just, or Netflix, I guess, even though Netflix didn't just buy this and just run with it. I mean, they kept everyone still involved, and I would hope that, out of respect, that people would continue to do that when appropriate, unless the first one sucked and they want to do it better.
Right. I guess maybe this kind of goes back to what we were talking about the other episode or two back when we were talking about Ready Player One and Ernest Cline being involved in helping write the script. Even though they didn't maybe necessarily need to go to him, they went to him to help kind of rewrite the challenges and whatnot, so it felt germane to the world he created in the book, right?
Right.
He was the original content creator of that world, so yeah, no, I like that. I'm glad that he's taking a stronger hand and that he's passionate.
Yep.
I hope we get something along the lines of Terminator and Terminator 2 and less along the lines of like Terminator Salvation.
Right. And I'm sure you're not alone.
I doubt that I am. Highly doubt.
Yes. So,
all right, what else you got?
Speaking of giving your heart
oh my
to
gosh,
a
we
project,
gotta stop this.
we're going to talk about Kevin Hart. And then now this is kind of a little bit sad here. He's not dead, but
wow, way to lead stronger. He's not dead.
I just want everybody to know, because you're going to be listening to this 10 days after it happened.
Yeah.
But Kevin Hart was in an accident. He was not driving the vehicle. He was a passenger, and the driver lost control, veered into an embankment, and both he and the driver sustained major injuries Kevin Hart specifically, as far as we know, was a major injury to his back. There was a third passenger that was unharmed. So, of course, our thoughts and prayers also are with Kevin Hart and his family, because back injuries are super scary and nobody wants to hear about anything wrong with the back and the neck, right? We don't have any other information as far as how Kevin Hart is doing. His wife did mention today, I read earlier, that he's doing just fine and he'll be okay. You read into that whatever you want. But of course, there's a whole, all of his friends and family and, co-stars have, begun tweeting, and they got the hashtag. I'll see if I can find exactly what they're trying to start here. So they've got a hashtag going, hashtag Get Better Kevin. People from Terry Crews to, of course, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Jeff Ross, Brad Garrett. These are all people that he's worked with closely. Paul Reiser, Yvette Nicole Brown. So he's got all of these, Mindy Kaling, all these people that he's worked with and that are important to him. So again, our thoughts and prayers are with Kevin Hart and his family. He's at the top of his game right now. He's so funny. Jumanji's coming out, I think, next year. It might be this year, actually.
December, maybe?
I think it's coming up here.
Although, why would you put anything up against Star Wars in December?
You're doomed. Especially, anyway. Kevin Hart's awesome, and I think we all wish him a speedy recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing I was thinking about with Kevin is that, obviously besides the injury, right, and whatnot, you start thinking, like, if you have a bad injury like that that's going to put you out for a while, like, how does that affect, like, your day-to-day, right?
Right.
So, like, if you were someone working, some job where, like, you work behind a computer, like, it's possible that you could,
sure,
after so much time, like, find a way to, like, work from home for a while you're going through rehab and this and that. But, like, he's a working stand-up comedian and actor who is, like, day in, day out, he gets up on a stage and he walks around and he talks to people and, you're not going to be able to be a stand-up comedian on stage. And then on top of that, like, acting, and he's doing, like, these movies that require, like, action stuff and, this and that. Like, this is going to sideline him for a while.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be like, oh, hey, it was like a 2-3 week injury. Like, this is probably going to be like multiple months, if not, half a year. I'm not exactly sure how long. But thankfully he's going to survive. Thankfully,
yes.
The other, hopefully everything will be okay and he'll be fine. But, like, something happens, back injuries, like, man, death, paralysis, like, neck and back injuries are just something you don't play around with.
Scary.
Like, it's just not fun. I don't have a great segue, Matt, so I'm not going to be able to
That's all right.
to smoothly transition between that and this, unless we're talking about the smoothness of blue milk.
Ooh.
So
okay, that's fine, I guess.
So that Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is open in Disneyland, right?
Ah.
Did we talk last week? I don't remember. Did we talk about how the little Coca-Cola
No,
bottles
we
that
didn't
look like the thermal detonators?
The TSA or whatever.
Yeah, we talked about that, right?
I don't think we did.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, TSA is not allowing them on and whatnot.
Ridiculous.
So, of course, there is a blue milk drink at Galaxy's Edge. And, of course, Mark Hamill has been to this. On the opening weekend and whatnot. And someone finally asked him, how the blue milk is compared to the real thing, to what he drank in the 1977 film Star Wars. And so he tweeted this out, and there's a picture of him drinking it. And the tweet says this, because I'm going to read this because it's just funny. It says, "Note to self, remember you're on camera and Disney signs your paychecks. Honestly, though, the warm, oily, sickly sweet milk dyed blue for the movie was gag-inducing, while this frosty non-dairy drink tasted like a yummy fruit smoothie." Now, why that's is really interesting is just because Obviously, Star Wars is coming up. We got a new movie.
Yep.
This new land in Disney just opened up. And Mark Hamill lately has just been killing it on social media. Just like some really funny stuff, some really kind of insightful things. Yep. But the interesting thing is, like, when you have to eat or drink something on camera, usually it does not taste good at all, because they got to make it look a certain way so it looks appealing.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily taste appealing. Or it'll be something else completely in order to give it the quality that it looks. I remember at one point, somewhere along the line, reading, like, you know when they shoot like pictures of like a Thanksgiving dinner and you see that turkey, and that turkey has like that perfect like brown glistening golden sheen to it, like it's just been basted and cooked and whatever.
Yeah.
I actually found out that usually what they do is they take like a frozen turkey and they take a bunch of coffee grounds and they put them in water and dilute it till they get the right color, and then they basically paint the coffee ground water onto that turkey to get that look. It's basically kind of like they're putting like a lacquer on top of it in order to get that. And so like you see and hear, I remember hearing that going like, oh, like you would never ever in a million years want to bite into that turkey on like camera if that were the case, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, right? The blue milk, it's not, that he had to do while he was, filming in 77, just,
Man.
But he did say that the green milk from The Last Jedi was apparently just like coconut water. He said, so that was totally fine to drink and wasn't a big deal.
Okay.
So even though that, in the case of like the blue milk, it looks good while he drinks it. In the case of the green milk, it looks disgusting when he drinks it. That whole scene's just super cringe worthy.
Like, ew, 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 ew.
But apparently the blue milk at Disneyland in Galaxy's Edge is yummy and like a fruit smoothie, a non-dairy fruit smoothie. And so you're totally cool to drink it.
Nice. Nice.
In case you wanted to know, there you go.
From the man himself.
Yep.
I have absolutely no segue also. All right. So it was announced last week that there is a remaster of the Lion King and Aladdin video games.
Speaking of things that are old, boom.
Poor Mark Hamill.
There you go. I meant the blue milk, not Mark Hamill.
Anyway.
Sorry, Mark. That was all Matt.
He listens to this podcast. He's actually our number one fan. Anyway.
That's true.
So the Lion King and Aladdin games for the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo are getting remastered and released for current generation consoles and PC.
Really?
Which is awesome, because I never beat them as a child because they were way too
ridiculous,
freaking hard.
Yes, ridiculous.
You think these are fun movies, but when you're Aladdin and you're trying to escape the Cave of Wonders with lava behind you 1 million times in a row on a freaking Sega Genesis, it is maddening. Or trying to beat the Just Can't Wait to Be King level with the giraffes flipping you up and you're falling and down. Anyway, I could talk about how absolutely difficult those games were, but I'm excited because now I'm so good at video games that I might have a chance at beating this. But it comes
probably not.
No, but thankfully, here I'll read this part because this is helpful. So the package includes the Sega Genesis and Game Boy releases of both games. So apparently there were Game Boy releases, as well as the Super Nintendo version of The Lion King.
Okay.
So we're getting the Super Nintendo version of The Lion King, the Sega Genesis version of Aladdin, blah, blah. Anyway. But along with special features to make the games easier to play.
Oh.
Which I am going to be grateful for, because I am already confident that I cannot beat it. If I couldn't beat it then in my heyday of like platforming, I doubt that I'll be able to do it in my 30s. So
I tell you what, gaming these days is completely different than when I was a child, because back then it was all like muscle memory and pattern recognition and no save points. None, zero, zip, zilch. Now it's like, hey, I walked 10 feet. Look, there's another save point. Or I can just go to the menu and I can save right from where I'm at. Right. Which admittedly is a very nice feature in a lot of games.
Yeah.
It's not like the old JRPG games where it's like, your mom would be like yelling at you like, Spence, come on down here. It's time for dinner. You're like, hold on. I got to find a save point. And like, it took you 15 minutes to find another save point or something, or to get back to the save point because you didn't want to like lose your last hour and a half of work in on the game and all the leveling. And so there's some nice things, but at the same time, like kids these days have it easy. Like, I remember playing Kid Nicky Radical Ninja on the NES, and that freaking game, I've never beat it. It is incredibly difficult because there's this one level, and it's like, I think like level 4 with these like bubbles. They're supposed to be like poisonous bubbles that like randomly float up from the ground, and you're supposed to jump, from platform to platform and avoid these bubbles. There's no pattern. They've got a mind of their own. They're like ridiculously, AI in this is just ridiculously hard. I think I've only passed that level maybe a handful of times ever. And then when I pass it, I've lost so many lives that I can't get past the ending.
Oh, man. Oh, my gosh. It's so frustrating.
That game is my nemesis. So I feel you on like the Lion King from like back in the day. Like that game was not easy.
It's hard.
So if you're going to use the cheat method, I'm not going to say you're taking the easy road. I'm saying you just want to get that bucket list check box, like you want to just get that monkey off your back.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. But it's totally cheating.
Yeah, it is. And I will do my best not to use it. I'm going to get it though. I mean, I have to. I have to. It's like $30, I think, and you get both versions of the game. So it's like a combo pack of Aladdin and Lion King. And
didn't they release for Nintendo Switch a little while ago like DuckTales and like Chippendales Rescue Rangers and Darkwing Duck, like those games?
I don't think so, but I guess
saw
it's
something
possible.
like that. All right, Super Friends, if you know anything about that, hit me up and let me know. Because I loved the DuckTales game back in the day. And it had the freaking DuckTales song, and that theme tune is just crack cocaine to your brain. All right, so last thing that I have here. Talking about a classic. No, I got nothing. Sorry. So Jack Ryan was the show that was released on Amazon a little while ago. It basically is kind of a retelling, a reimagining of a lot of the Tom Clancy books. Jack Ryan is the main protagonist in a lot of his early books. There was probably like 6, 7-ish books that all involved Jack Ryan as the major lead in those books. And the Jack Ryan show was on Amazon, and it did really well. That series did really well. Mm-hmm. And so we got a little sneak peek into season 2. There's not a lot, a couple still shots, but John Krasinski was interviewed. He said that he's really excited because in the second season, in the first season, his character's more like, I'm an analyst for the CIA. I did all this research. Here's the research. Now you go get the bad guy and do what you need to do. Uh-huh. But now, after the events of the first season, he kind of says, like, going into this next season, his character's eyes are opened and he can't go back to that way. And so now he's going to have to move forward, which to me says he's going to take a more active role. I love this series. I love the casting. I love the fact that we have all like the major kind of characters from the books and the major characters we saw in a lot of the movie adaptations of these books.
Right.
But I love the fact that they did something that the Bourne movies did, right? Is that they took this character and they took this kind of premise, but then they kind of moved it forward in time to make it a little more modern, a little more current. And Jack Ryan has done this because similar to the Bourne books, the Tom Clancy books like start off in like the early 80s, and that's kind of where the Bourne books start off as well, which is the Bourne books are amazing book series. Completely different story than the movies altogether. But they're like, they're kind of time blocked to the 80s. So like they talk about things and like the idea of like satellite phones is like really like kind of a new concept in some of the later books and this, that, and the other. Whereas like in this last season of Jack Ryan, like, obviously it's like set in modern day. So he's got cell phones and they're using like, all these new technologies that wouldn't have been around in 1981. So we don't have an official release date from Amazon Prime. They're just saying coming soon. Now, they've done this before where they say coming soon, and then it's like it drops like 2 months later. So I don't know if we're going to be getting it that soon or if they're kind of being kind of cagey with it. But I mean, we know they're also working on the Wheel of Time. We also know they're working on the Lord of the Rings. So that kind of like a series in the Second Age somewhere. So Amazon Prime Video is really stepping up their game with some content. And I think they're trying to start locking down some of these big kind of cultural zeitgeist moment type of series.
Right.
So they can start releasing them and, kind of get some more buzz and some momentum going, especially with Disney Plus coming around.
Yeah, because Amazon Prime, in my opinion, is a little behind the game right now with releasing new content compared to even Hulu, I feel like. But
true. However, the content they have released has been
better.
Top notch.
Yeah, Yep.
So, speaking of Disney Plus, did you happen to get on that Founders Circle deal?
I did.
So, Super Friends, if you're not familiar with what we're talking about right now, we know that Disney Plus is coming. And we know that signups for the general masses have not started yet. But back at D23, if you were a D23 member and you were at the event, they actually let you sign up for Disney Plus. Then they opened it up to all D23 members, and the sign up for that officially ended yesterday. But here's the catch. You couldn't sign up for a single year. You had to sign up for 3 years. But they incentivized you. If you signed up for 3 years, you got it at a reduced cost, which basically brings the cost like $3.58 a month.
It's crazy, man.
It's crazy deal. It's crazy cheap. It's stupid cheap. It's just like for $3.58 for a whole month. Like,
I can't believe that.
Like that is less
money.
that's like the price of maybe like a Happy Meal, a little less than a Happy Meal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. But it's a 3-year deal. So like, I'm going to be getting Disney Plus for like the next 3 years, and I've paid it already up front, so I don't have to worry about paying it for the next 3 years. We don't still know when they're going to open it up en masse, but I'm going to imagine it's got to be soon. Now that they're kind of getting their thing rolling here, and they're kind of getting a test group. We'll essentially say that's what the D23 group is, a test group, to see how the website worked and how everything worked and signups and this and that, and make sure it's smooth. I mean, smart way to do it, but
yeah,
3 years, Matt, we're locked in, buddy.
I mean, it was an easy decision for us.
Oh, so easy.
Like, how would we not? So, and they allow up to 4 screens and 7 profiles at the same time. So I'm going to split with my parents. So for me, my cost went from half to half again. So it's like less than $2 a month. So crazy deal. Disney Plus, excited.
You're not on that Charter cable, though, that's trying to knock down.
No, but Disney's talked about trying to do that, too. We're in the same zip code, so I don't think they're going to be able to do too much about my mom and I sharing one, so we'll see.
Yeah, unless it's locked to public IP.
Yeah, then we're screwed, and I say, Mom and Dad, figure it out, because this is my deal. I signed up my email. Yep. Y'all got to pay $7 a month.
Yeah. Suckers. Anyway, that's the last thing I had in Rebel Intelligence.
That's all I got, too.
Okay, so last week, last week feels like so long ago. We actually talked about D23, and we talked about Disney Plus, and we asked the Super Friends, what is the thing you are most looking forward to coming up on Disney Plus? And so we got some answers. So, starting over on the email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com, like we always do, we have Peter Christensen. Yep. He says, Dear Nerds, after plugging G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra last week, I rewatched it. It's on Prime. And let me say, I undersold it. This movie is an awesome, fun action movie by the same director as Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. It got a similar vibe and energy to Aquaman or Fast 5. There's insane action, crazy vehicles and weapons, infinite ammo clips, everything explodes, everything crashes, everything flips, shocking good cast from top to bottom, ninja fights, Chinese throwing stars, well-developed characters with backgrounds and emotional stakes, over-the-top villains that are just shy of corny, underwater dogfights, and a Hall of Fame Paris chasing. It's priceless. Treat yourself.
Oh my gosh.
Emphasis added. He does say, to be clear, switching topics. Gilbert Godfrey as cartoon Iago was perfect. I was casting John Oliver as Iago in the Will Smith Aladdin remake.
Oh, in that case, yes, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an easy choice. All birds. He looks like a bird. John Oliver is a bird. He's America's bird. He's he's England's bird.
I love that he's America's bird, but he's British. Yeah, nice.
I'll take it. I don't care. He's beautiful.
Peter goes on to say the Five Guys Cajun seasoning is too much.
Okay, so he's a no seasoning guy. I respect that. I don't like the seasoning either.
Okay. He says, strong second to Scott Pilgrim. It's a unique movie with a lot of young stars and wacky humor and wackier action.
Okay, yep.
He says, I'll abstain from D23 announcements. I've gotten out of the here's something to watch in 2 years game, but I appreciate a stocked pipeline of cool-looking shows. Cheers, Peter Christensen. I don't blame Peter for saying, like, here's something that's going to come up in 2 years. Because that hype train it can get a little old. It can be a little much at times, and then you feel like you're waiting on something for so long, maybe it doesn't live up to expectations. I get it. Then we get another email. A follow-up from Peter Christensen.
Peter.
This says, P.S. Took the Traeger for service. Fired it up. And now I'm ready to smoke some meats.
All right.
And I say to you, Peter Christensen, hella freaking Luya. Get on that. I actually bought a brisket over the weekend, and I've yet to smoke it. I was going to smoke it over the weekend, but some plans kind of changed, and so this upcoming weekend, I think I'm smoking a brisket on Sunday.
Man, that sounds delicious.
Yes. We have let's go over to Facebook. Facebook.com/ForwardOfNerd. From the man, the myth, the legend, the former co-host himself, Stu Jones, says, The Mandalorian. Everything else is gravy.
So true.
So true. All right. Now we have this. This is Caleb Albers, by the way. I want you to buckle up. Just
oh, boy.
A little bit, because we got some stuff here, and Caleb is our resident, like, comic detail nerd.
Oh, boy.
So he knows lots, and he wrote like a novel. So, says, okay, I'm about to hit you with some needed knowledge. So here goes. First of all, both of you were wrong. It was Sebastian Stan, not Stan Sebastian.
Okay, let's stop the email. This is going to be too critical. My ego can't take a hit like this.
Right. Says, little history of She-Hulk. She's actually the cousin of Bruce Banner. Her father was the target of a crime boss, and her parents were killed in a car accident. She lived, but was shot by a mobster. Being seriously wounded, she needed an emergency blood transfusion. The only viable donor was Banner, who was in the area, coming to tell her about his recent transformation into Hulk. Anyway, her rage at the mobster and shared DNA with Banner is what transformed her, though she retains her personality in her transformation. She never loses control, but her transformation does end up becoming permanent. Spoiler alert. Early iterations say she chooses to be hulked out because she likes the confidence that she has as She-Hulk. Later on, it's not really a choice. Anyway, She-Hulk is an amazing character. I'm so excited to see what they do with her.
Okay.
So a little background. I mean,
sounds better now, but
I kind of thought we kind of hit a little bit of that highlights, but then again, maybe not. Definitely not to Caleb's standards.
No, I didn't know about the crime boss. Come on.
He says, Moon Knight, you nailed on the head. Only thing you missed is that he has multiple personality disorder. And from what I've read about him, it's unknown whether he actually was possessed by an ancient Egyptian god or if that's one of his other personalities. So, his powers could be supernatural or they could be psychosomatic. Who knows what route they take?
Cool.
Okay, interesting.
That's cool.
Lastly, before I answer, I want to go to bat for the less tier heroes. I've always found they have incredible stories behind them. Marvel does an amazing job with character building, and I think every hero in their roster deserves their time to shine with a show, short, or movie.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm open to it.
I'm open to it too. I'm just starting to get a little leery about how deep we go for some of the minor characters. That's all. I'm not saying Marvel can't do a great job. I'm just I feel like we can do a deep dive, but then we need to come back to shallower waters and hit the more reliable standard stable, which is I think why we're getting like a Loki series and like WandaVision, because like we're familiar with those two characters, but like if we were to like focus on like some obscure unknown villain for a whole series, I don't think it would be as good as something that's like Tom Hiddleston and Loki, a character that's been established over multiple movies,
right,
and is portrayed in this amazing way by Tom Hiddleston. I mean, that's an easy go-to. And I think we need to have those mixed in with the Moon Knights and the She-Hulks.
I agree. I find it interesting, though. I'm going to offend probably a majority of our fan base here. I don't know anything about comic books or comics, just in general. My first introduction to any of this was like the Incredible Hulk movie in the 2000s. That was like, and like Spider-Man.
Ang Lee.
Like I knew who Spider-Man was, and I liked Spider-Man as a character, and obviously I was exposed to Batman and stuff, but I never read any of the comic books.
Yeah, okay.
So for me, everything they've done is new. Loki,
Gotcha.
Never heard of him. Iron Man, knew nothing about you. Even Captain America, I don't know who you are. And so for me, I'm like, that, especially the Moon Knight guy, he looks cool. I'm like kind of excited for that one because it looks like a cool, like evil, but good, but evil character, ? Multiple personalities. So from my perspective, somebody who doesn't know anything about comics, it doesn't matter as much to me who they focus on because I now trust Marvel that they're going to put a good product out there. And so I'm all for it. But like Loki, I'm excited for because of how they introduced him to me as somebody who'd never heard of him before and how they've established his character. And so I'm excited to see how they can involve these other new characters in cool ways.
Yeah, I gotcha. Let's finish this. He says, finally, the question of the week. I'm probably most excited for She-Hulk and Miss Marvel. I love those characters so much. I think that they have so much depth to them, and I love the idea of what issues they can tackle with each of them. With She-Hulk, tackling confidence in yourself and what you look like along with empowerment. With Miss Marvel, being a young female teen with a Middle Eastern heritage dealing with your powers, your identity, and family life. These are shows I want out in the world for my daughter to enjoy when she's ready for them. Anyway, apologies for the nerd rant. Love the show, guys. And Matt, there will never be too much Marvel.
Okay. It's fair.
Yep. Okay, let's move over to Twitter. We got one response this week. Twitter, Grinny at the Real Grinny. Definitely The Mandalorian, though they did confirm an Obi-Wan spinoff of some sort at D23, so my fanboy radar is going crazy. Can't wait for that one.
That sounds like me. I think that's what I said.
Yep, I definitely agree. Well, Super Friends, thank you so much for your answers. We really appreciate your interaction. It's always one of our favorite parts. You can always hit us up at all those normal places, which is Facebook, Twitter, email, Instagram, which is Fort of Nerd. We're also voicemail, 801-477-7687. And let us know. Matt, Super Friends are helping us. They're out there week after week. What can they do this week?
Well, the message, I don't know if it's been received yet. We still are looking for reviews. Head on iTunes, subscribe, and rate our wonderful podcast that we pour our hearts and souls into, and that you too pour your hearts and souls into interacting with us. Like Spencer said, it really is. Actually, it probably is my favorite part of the show is hearing what everyone has to say. So continue to help us grow so we can continue to have these interactions by telling your friends about us, look them up on iTunes or podcast, whatever it's going to be called when the new update comes out for the Mac. And then if you're on PC, I think it stays the same, or I don't know how it's going to work for PC, but continue to talk about it, show it to your friends. That's kind of our message to you. Spread the love, and we will spread the love, and all the love will be spread all around, and we can have a fun time together.
It's a lot of love spread there, Matt.
I'm feeling much more calm and at peace this week.
Well, you know what? Since you're talking about spreading the love, and I witnessed this amazing sign, dedication, expression of love between two wonderful human beings, why don't we just keep that whole idea going? Why don't we dedicate this episode and this discussion to Stu and Katina, and let's talk about love, but let's put our Fortress of Nerditude spin on it. Let's talk about our favorite like romances in like movies or books, TV, comics, whatever. And we'll kind of talk about some of our favorites and why they are our favorites.
I love that.
I love it too.
All right, I will get us started.
Okay.
So when Spencer and I were talking about this week's discussion, he brought up the idea of nerdy romances, and I thought to myself, okay, there's a couple of ways that I can go about this. You know, is it romances from movies that are pop culture and nerd kind of in the genre of our podcast, or is it actual like nerds falling for each other? You know what I'm saying? There's a difference there. I kind of went with the nerds like falling in love, or at least one of them being a nerd, I should say. And that was TVs and movies. So the first one I have, one of my favorite movies growing up was the Goofy movie, and it's a love story. It is a romantic comedy, but also it's mostly about his dad and son. It's a father-son movie, but the couple of Max and Roxanne is a wonderful, in my opinion, a wonderful kind of a coming-of-age romance, awkward teenage years, trying to figure things out, nerd guy and the popular girl, kind of a mesh and melding of things. I mean, there's a whole song where he talks about how he doesn't want to be a goof anymore, and he's embarrassed by his dad, but he's nerdy. I mean, he's kind of a geek and a loser a little bit. Not that geeks and nerds are losers, not anymore. Now it's cool to be those things. However, at that time, and in this movie, not so cool. So his nerdy friends, I mean, the guy with the Leaning Tower of Pisa, I mean, the guy, he's a nerd to the max, falling for the popular girl and trying to prove to her that he's cool, but really she just likes him for him. I love it.
So I hadn't seen this movie until maybe like a year ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't, I mean, I'm trying to think of like when this movie came out.
It was 94.
Okay. So like, yeah, by that point, I was only maybe watching like Disney movies or like the big ones like Lion King.
Sure.
Other than that, it was like, you know, I just kind of wasn't on my radar. I mean, I was, you know, that was high school for me. So I was, you know, into a lot of other things at the time. And, you know, this is Generation X and I'm just, so I watched it about a year ago. And when I watch that movie now, like that movie feels very 90s to me.
It's very 90s.
Very 90s. But it is funny because, like, yeah, you're right. That movie does have that kind of romance element to it, even though, like, I wouldn't say it's like a romance movie necessarily.
Between a father and son, maybe.
Right. I mean, it's more of a tale of father and son.
Yep.
But it does have that whole, like, romance kind of element going through it. I don't know that I would have pegged you going there right off the bat, Matt. So I think you went more of the nerd, you know, the nerd gets the girl type of thing. Yeah. And I think I went more of the like romances in kind of like nerd pop culture that kind of, you know,
great.
fit
We'll
into
have
the
a great
thing.
variety.
So yeah, we may not have a lot of overlap. So I'm going to start with one that has been in comics and movies, and it's one of my favorites of all time. But I'm specifically going to talk about the movie version because it holds a special dear place in my heart. So I'm going to talk about Superman and Lois Lane from 1978's Superman.
Cool.
So this movie obviously is like the movie that really kicked off the whole idea of like, can we do superhero movies? Could they be done well, right? But while that's going on, and while we've got this whole plot about Lex Luthor trying to get, these missiles so he can break off a huge chunk of California and sink it into the ocean, so all this property he buys in Nevada can become now beachfront real estate and he can make a ton of money. We have this story of Clark Kent, who is Superman. That like his personality is Superman. That's who he is. He is Kal-El, but he's trying to hide as Clark Kent, and he starts a new job. And at this new job, he meets this woman that he like has this huge crush on, and she's this ace reporter, and he's trying to follow her around. But like she falls in love with Superman, and he really can't come out as Superman to her because then he blows his, his secret identity and blows his cover. And so you have this whole like kind of this unrequited love thing of like Clark is in love with Lois, but Lois is in love with Superman, but Clark is Superman, but he can't let her know.
Oh.
And there's like this whole like back and forth, but then what really caps off the whole kind of love story is that at the end of this thing, the missile goes off. Big thing, Lois dies. She's crushed in a car. She's buried in this crevice, along the fault line. And Superman just loses it. And so what does he do? He flies around the earth backwards so fast that he reverses the spin of the earth, which in this film turns back time.
Makes sense.
And he turns back time so he can get to Lois and save her in time, because the first time he's just trying to save everyone and make sure he's doing all the thing, and then he realizes he's lost Lois, his love, the person that he's just madly deeply in love with, and he reverses time and changes the course of kind of like history in order to save her and put some other things right. So I love that it's obviously not a romance film. It's a superhero film, but there is this whole flight sequence. This kind of like sequence where he flies with Lois and she's kind of monologuing over some music. So like it definitely has the whole kind of romance vibe through it. But that whole like I'm in love with her, but she's in love with me, but doesn't know that I'm the guy she's really in love with sort of thing is a great story. And it's a story of kind of the guy wants the girl but isn't going to get the girl, which I think is, he gets her as Superman but not as Clark.
Right.
And that's completely different than a lot of things. So it's kind of a twist on something we're kind of familiar with.
Yeah. I love that, actually. I've always found that interesting. I'm not like huge Superman. I've seen them all. I love them all. But I'm familiar with it enough. And I do love that particular aspect of his story and her story. It's really cool. That's a good one.
And on top of that, like it picks up that whole kind of thing in Superman 2, and it has a great love story there, like where he's willing to give away his powers and become mortal for her. Like, oh gosh, like beautiful. Superman and Lois Lane, one of my favorites.
That's awesome. I wasn't planning on sharing this one. This was like my alternate, but I'm going to do it because it fits so well with what you said. And mine is Peter Parker and MJ, specifically from Tobey Maguire trilogy.
Okay. Yeah.
That is, I mean, I'm still trying to, in my own mind, trying to figure out which of the really 3 popular iterations of Spider-Man is my favorite, but I always will go back to the Tobey Maguire version with Kirsten Dunst and just their chemistry, he being just portrayed as like super nerd and she's like with the cool Flash, right? In the new movies, Flash is like, I mean, he's cool, but he's not like the hot hunky guy.
Yeah. He's not like the most popular kid. He's kind of like,
he's regular. He's
kind
of a jerk.
Kind of a jerk. Yeah.
Yeah. But in that movie, it's like this insurmountable, impossible task to get MJ, and his love where it's borderline sometimes like creepy and like cute also too. And she similar to the Superman thing you shared, right? In Spider-Man, and it's raining and the reverse kiss. I mean, it's iconic, right? That's one of the more iconic romance scenes in cinema, in my opinion. The upside down Spider-Man. It's so cool. I love Peter Parker. I love Spider-Man. And I think that's, in my opinion, it's the best way they've done MJ and Peter Parker, and how it, in Spider-Man 2 especially, just the way that it toys with him and his powers and his emotions. And Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite Spider-Man movie ever made. I mean, it's just, that romance to me is top notch.
So I actually had that on my list.
Oh shoot! I shouldn't have shared it.
No, that's great because like I had that on my list too for like a lot of the same reasons as you. Like in the movie portrayal with Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, for the same reasons. Like he wants the most popular girl in school, and he just wants her to notice him.
Yeah.
Because he feels like if she will just notice him, he's got a chance because he's smart and because he's a good guy. And eventually, he wins her over as both Spider-Man and as Peter Parker. Because she does see Peter Parker for the, kind of the hero that he really truly is as well. Mm-hmm. Which is really interesting, though, when they recast and they did Andrew Garfield, that they did not do Mary Jane, that they switched to Spider-Man's other love interest in the comics, which is Gwen Stacy, because I think they felt like we so heavily focused on those 3 movies on MJ and Peter that like we need to move off that. Yep. And so to see them kind of go back to the whole MJ, but like not MJ thing, like it's there, but like, it's kind of building's different. Yeah. It's has a more kind of meta, I don't want to say this, but it has a more millennial feel to kind of that romance part of the love story versus like the kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, like I'm going to tell the more traditional comic book version of it.
Right.
But, well, I'm glad you picked that because that is a good one. But that means I get to free up and go to one of my alternates because I had some alternates as well.
Nice.
This one is a little different because it is romance, but it's not at the same time. So I picked The Doctor and Rose Tyler from Doctor Who. And the reason I went this is because, so Rose Tyler, let me back up. The Doctor, for those of you that may not know, which I really hope, Super Friends, that's not the case, but the Doctor is a Time Lord. He travels through time and space in a spaceship called the TARDIS, and he tries to help out civilizations, peoples. He tries to put things right. He's a doctor. He tries to help heal things and fix things. But usually throughout the series, he travels with at least one companion or sometimes a couple, a human that'll go along with him. And in the 9th and 10th Doctors of this series, he lands in London. He picks up this woman named Rose Tyler. She's like 19 years old, just kind of out of school. And she's actually like dating a guy when that series opens up. But basically kind of like that relationship kind of falls apart and she kind of puts her love interest onto the Doctor. And for most of her time with her, like you can tell like the Doctor like cares for her and has affection for her, but you can tell like she has more of a yearning, more of like a, I wish this could be more than this kind of platonic thing that it is. Mm-hmm. But as the series gets a little longer, along with her as the companion, we get to this point where like you see that like the way they're playing it up, you see that it appears that the Doctor has now more heavy feelings for her. And in the very end of the Rose Tyler's turn with the Doctor, the Doctor regenerates. When he doesn't die, he basically regenerates, his power transforms him and he takes on a new body. It's a great way that the British wrote it so that they could change out actors to continue playing the Doctor and then keep the show going. But in the final time when David Tennant regenerates and it's his Doctor, he has this huge thing where, he's been separated now from Rose for a while. There's been a couple other companions in between, and he's getting ready to regenerate, and he's trying to hold off the regeneration as long as he can. And he kind of gives this like, I don't want to go, this kind of speech. And right before then, he travels back to London, back to like the night right before the Doctor shows up and meets Rose Tyler, and he kind of bumps into her and he sees her one last time. And it's this moment, like this callback where like there's this look and like he's going to say something and then things move a different way and then it ends and he regenerates and becomes Matt Smith's Doctor. What I loved about this though is that fans really, and they will debate this to no end, that the Doctor really ended up gaining real affection and real feelings for her, for Rose Tyler on a different level than any other companion, that in his last moment before he was going to regenerate and before things would change and before, not that he'd lose his memory, but like his personality would change, his last stop before he left was to go see Rose one last time, because in the show, like, she was in an alternate universe now, and because of some things that happened, he couldn't go see her. She was locked off to him. So he went back in time to see a younger version of her right before he meets her, because he wanted to and he cared about her. He was going to say something, it gets cut off, we never really see what happens earlier in one of the seasons and this and that. And so, like, it's this whole, like, a buildup of love and a buildup of this emotion, and the producers of the dang show cut it off and they leave you wanting more, and they never give you a full resolution. And I think that's great, because it leaves a lot to be desired, and it leaves a lot of room for the fans to put their own kind of interpretation or feelings into it and kind of plug in those gaps. So it means something different, a little bit different to each fan of the series. And I think that's a really good way to do a romance like there. Like, it's not going to be obvious. It's not going to beat you over the head, but we don't have to go down the kind of the path of, like, you know, she falls in love and he falls in love with her and then he's going to have to say goodbye. Like, it's not quite ever there. It's just kind of budding. It's great. It's great. I love it.
I can tell you love it. I've seen bits and pieces of Doctor Who. I know that it's big in our in-law group chat at time to time. Most people, it appears like, in the family have seen it. I am one of those who have not seen enough to intelligently talk about it. I need to get
you should
on
change that.
It.
You should. And I will say this. When you start it, the first season that has Christopher Eccleston, the production quality is a little lower, and there's going to be just some weird things. It's going to feel very kind of campy.
Okay.
Just roll with it. Just go with it. You get through that first season, which is like maybe 10 episodes or so, and then you'll get into the David Tennant season, and he runs for, I think, 3 seasons. And the show picks up, the production quality picks up, and if you can get through the first season and you're still watching it and you get to David Tennant, that's when I think it's going to hook you.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Rose Tyler and the Doctor. That's a good one.
I've got another one for you here. This one I didn't come to appreciate until Jesse and I rewatched this entire series, I want to say like a year and a half ago. And that is Cory and Topanga from Boy Meets World.
Okay.
Both of them so nerdy, especially her, right? Especially in season 1. When you can binge watch the seasons, it's like pretty stark, the changes that these kids go through and the way that the writers choose to change how they are. Topanga used to be like smart, and then she kind of, anyway, it changes. She's still smart, but changes her weird. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is Cory and Topanga over like 9 seasons have this romance, and it all, of course, leads up to getting married and having kids. And I love it. I mean, it's this kind of a will they, won't they, but it's like in season 1, he likes her and she didn't like him and he didn't like her. And then it continues on through that. And then they date intermittently throughout the rest of the series. And they continue to make mistakes that we've all made in our lives and in relationships that we've had in the past. And they always find a way to somehow get through it. Even though there are certain times when I'm like, yo, this needs to end. Y'all are crazy. However, it's one of those ones where you're like, you know how it's going to end, especially after probably 3 seasons. You know they're going to end up together. But it's still very satisfying to see, though I don't love Topanga, I love Cory. They are a good match. And I chose that one just because of the nerdiness of both of them. I was like, that's a good nerdy romance. We're both kind of nerdy in their own ways. Topanga book smart and Cory just nerdy in a different way. So that was one that I immediately thought of. Maybe it's because I recently rewatched it, and if you have not recently rewatched Boy Meets World, I recommend it, especially as a father now watching how Alan Matthews, their dad, parents, is actually pretty heartwarming, and the mistakes he makes, and as a father kind of looking through those things and picking things out about my family. And it's that's what I loved about that era of sitcoms in the 90s with Boy Meets World and Full House and things like that, is there's always something that you can learn from it. It's all very heartfelt. Sometimes the music is a little sappy and dramatic. However, there are good things to be pulled out of those shows. When sitcoms now, it's a little more rare. I feel like to really feel like you're getting something out of it. And when you do, it's satisfying.
Except maybe Friday Night Lights.
Okay, yeah. Friday Night Lights, the exception to all the bad rules of television. Also, right. Community, the exception as well. There are times in Community where I have outright cried. There's always something heartwarming in that show for you to pull from. But anyway, 90s were great, and Boy Meets World is great, and that romance continues through the ages with Girl Meets World or whatever the heck they've got going on now.
See, I never saw Boy Meets World.
Oh man.
Like I remember when it came out on TV, but I don't remember that it ever really interested me.
Yep. I get it.
So like I just didn't watch it. But like, yeah, I know a ton of people that did. Like my younger sisters watched that show and they were totally into that. But I don't remember when that came out, but I remember when that came out, like I felt at the time like it was something my sisters were into, that it was a show that, like, I don't know. I just remember like my brother and I were kind of like, like it didn't.
I get it.
Really hit, but it probably came out like, not too long after like a lot of the like the TGIF kind of stuff and like the Saved by the Bells and the
right.
Probably early 90s is my guess.
I think, yeah, that sounds about right. I remember being in the same. This was my first time through the series as well. It was very popular, but in my days, I was a rebel without a cause. If it was popular, I didn't like it. Blink-182, no thanks. Along with, that was my middle school days.
Yeah, you weren't wrong though there on Blink-182.
No, I wasn't. Anyway, so I also didn't. I thought it was a little too cool for it, just to be honest. I thought it was too kiddie, and I was not sure of myself, obviously. Now, as a grown man, I'm very sure of myself. I like what I like, and everybody else can eat it. I would go back and watch it. It really is. It makes you feel things. It's really, really good. Really good. And stands the test of time. You don't feel necessarily like you're stuck in the 90s. You feel like these are still current issues and problems that we face as families and as communities and friends now. It's really good.
Okay. All right. Man, I'm trying to decide, like, I've got like three.
Focus on what, and then just give me the honorable mentions. Go bop, bop. So you don't feel like you're giving them less love.
So honorable mentions, I'm going to say Buttercup and Wesley.
Oh, so
from
good.
The Princess Bride. I mean, gosh, that whole movie is literally about like one man's desire to like come back to the woman he loved, and like he's willing to do anything to get there. He becomes the Dread Pirate Roberts, and all that. So honorable mention to Buttercup and Wesley, and then I'm gonna say honorable mention to Han Solo and Princess Leia.
Okay.
He's the ruffian, the rebel, the kind of the bad boy. And she's kind of like, the good girl, the girl that does all the things to be expected. She's a senator's daughter, and she's, in the Senate herself, and, she's a politician. So like, it's the kind of the classic, the good girl, kind of falls for the bad boy type of story. And it's great. And we kind of see it play out over a few movies. And then obviously we know that they ended up together. But I think, on the real nerdy kind of side of things, Chuck Bartowski and Sarah Walker from the TV show Chuck. So Chuck is this nerd that works at the Buy More, which is essentially Best Buy, but in the show it's called Buy More. And he's got this really nerdy friend, Morgan, and they work in the Nerd Herd, which is like the Geek Squad, basically.
Yeah.
And he gets shipped these sunglasses from a friend of his that from high school, and turns out that this friend of his in high school become this like super spy and stole this tech, and he sends it to him. And so when Chuck puts on these glasses, he gets flashed with this huge data dump of all this like secret intelligence spy network, data, and it downloads into his brain. And Sarah Walker is like a CIA agent that was dating the friend that ended up getting killed. So now she tries to track down the tech to see where it's gone, and finds out that Chuck Bartowski has actually downloaded this. And so now she's trying to like get reconnaissance on him. And she is like literally drop dead gorgeous. She is like every like cliche of like, she's super hot. That they do slow motion stuff where they'll blow like, a fan on her and her hair will, whip in the breeze and she'll throw her head back and they're just like gawking at her like nerds would.
Right.
But the thing is that like, as the show goes on, she tries to protect him because he's got this intersect in him. That's what they call it, the intersect. He's got this intersect in him. So she's trying to protect him. But like, as things are going along, like she really starts seeing him for the human being that he is a good guy. And he doesn't date a lot and he's just trying to do the right thing. And so she starts kind of getting this little crush on him. Well, of course, he has this massive crush on her. And so it is kind of the classic, like the nerd and the super hot girl kind of story. But as things kind of progress along, like he ends up kind of becoming like the more macho alpha kind of guy. And she starts to back away from him a little bit because, he realizes like, now I've got all these abilities and this, that, and the other. And she's like, but I liked you when you were just the nerdy guy and you were just a nice guy and you spent time playing board games with your friends. And so like, he's got to kind of like balance that out and like figure out like, am I what this intersect has made me become, or am I still who I am? And so it's kind of this like love story that kind of gets intertwined, a will they, won't they sort of thing, right. But also kind of this self-discovery and like, now that I'm a nerd that's been kind of like elevated to like the popular status, so to speak, if this were like high school terms,
right?
Where does that put me? Like, how do things work? Do people still like me for who I was or who I am now? Chuck is a funny freaking show that ran on NBC for like 4 seasons. You can stream it. It's totally worth watching. Chuck Bartowski and Sarah Walker, because it is that cringe-worthy, awkward nerd going after the hot girl type of scenario, and they play it up to no freaking expense. Like it's shameless, but that makes it that much funnier. So
that's awesome. I have honorable mentions as well, since you got to do yours. So
yeah. Hit me.
Jessie would be mad because she suggested one that was like top tier. And that is Leslie Knope and Ben Wyatt from Parks and Rec. Ultimate nerds, both of them.
Yes.
I mean, Ben Wyatt invented the most complex board game, the Cones of Dunshire. Like,
Cones
are you kidding me? Talking about a
Yes.
nerdy romance. That one is, it probably should have made the cut, to be honest. I mean, that really fits this perfectly. That one, the other honorable mention is Psych. Sean Spencer and Juliette O'Hara. It's a will they, won't they for 8 seasons, and it's fantastic. So those are the 2 that I had in mind as my alternates.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I'm glad we had this like talk and like, we kind of toss out some of our favorites. But Super Friends, we want to hear from you. This week is normally we do like kind of a love or a thing around Valentine's Day, but no, dang it. We're celebrating the love of Stu and Katina tonight on the podcast and this week. So we want to hear actually 2 things. I want to hear 2 things. One, I want to hear an outpouring of love for Stu and Katina, because if you guys can get me messages and congratulatory, whatever, voicemails, pictures, whatever, I will make sure that when Stu gets back from Italy on his honeymoon in 2 weeks, that I forward all of that to him and we can drown him in love. So 1, Super Friends, let's flood Stu some love. 2, tell us who is your favorite romance from nerd pop culture. This can be TV, movies, video games, comic books, whatever. And we'll read those next week. I'm excited to see, because I think there's so much, Matt. There's so many different things.
Yeah.
I just think it's all a matter of like how it hits the individual and like why it makes an impact.
Yeah.
So like obviously I said Superman and Lois Lane, and like that's huge because I love Superman and Superman is near and dear to my heart. So, you know, that makes sense. The Goofy movie is like, I know something that like is, you know, like with you and Jesse, like you guys, like that's beloved by the two of you.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm assuming that you saw this thing when it came out, like around 94-ish.
So many times, man. So many times.
Yeah. So like it's imprinted on your soul.
It is.
So I want to hear from you, Super Friends. What is imprinted on your soul? What is like the great romance in nerd pop culture? Let us know all the normal places. Email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, voicemail, smoke signals, however you got to get them to us. Get them to us, and we will talk about them next week. All right, Matt. End of the show. Anything else you want to say to Stu and Katina as they're off on their honeymoon and won't listen to this for 2 weeks?
Congratulations. Thank you for paving the way that I could become a part of this podcast as well. Thank you for taking time away so that I could join in on the festivities of the Fortress of Nerditude. And thank you to all of you listening. We love you guys. This is fantastic. I'm having a great time on this podcast. I hope you can tell. Enjoy interactions with y'all. Thanks for listening to me. And I appreciate it too. I want to share my love. I was telling you, I was feeling lots of love today.
A lot of love tonight, and I love that. Well, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude, to all of you out there, wherever you are, may the Force be with you, always.